Embracing impermanence is one of the most powerful concepts in Buddhist teachings, and it holds the key to liberating ourselves from unnecessary suffering. Impermanence means understanding and accepting that everything in life is fleeting: our emotions, circumstances, relationships, achievements, and even struggles. Nothing remains static. Everything is in a constant state of change. This realization can be both humbling and empowering because it shifts how we view life's inevitable changes. Instead of clinging tightly to what we have or fearing what we might lose, we can learn to appreciate the present moment for what it is: a temporary experience. When we cling to people, situations, or outcomes, believing that they will remain as they are forever, we set ourselves up for disappointment. The truth is, no matter how much we try to control or hold on, change is the only constant. Understanding impermanence helps us release our attachment to things that are beyond our control. It invites us to let go of the anxiety that comes from trying to keep things from changing. When we resist this natural flow of life, we create inner turmoil, but when we embrace it, we discover a profound sense of peace. Embracing impermanence also reminds us of the preciousness of each moment. Knowing that nothing lasts forever encourages us to savor our experiences, relationships, and accomplishments while we have them. It fosters gratitude, allowing us to be fully present and mindful of the beauty in every fleeting moment. When we understand that the tough times will also pass, it gives us hope and resilience during challenges. We realize that pain, grief, and hardship are not permanent states, but temporary waves we can ride through. This principle is especially important in difficult times. When faced with loss, disappointment, or pain, remembering the impermanent nature of all things helps us find solace. We learn that suffering too will pass. This perspective prevents us from becoming overwhelmed by the weight of our emotions. By understanding that no negative state lasts forever, we can endure challenges with greater grace and patience, knowing that time will bring change. On the other hand, embracing impermanence also helps us stay grounded during moments of success and joy. It teaches us not to become overly attached to positive outcomes or base our happiness solely on external achievements. While it's natural to enjoy good times, impermanence reminds us not to depend on them for our sense of well-being. By accepting that these moments will come and go, we remain centered, knowing that our inner peace does not need to fluctuate with life's inevitable highs and lows. Moreover, impermanence encourages us to live with greater flexibility. Since everything is subject to change, we can approach life with openness and adaptability. When we are not rigidly attached to a specific outcome or plan, we become more resilient to life's surprises. We learn to flow with the changes rather than fight them. This creates a mindset of growth and acceptance, where we view changes and challenges as opportunities to learn and evolve. Embracing impermanence doesn't mean we live in fear of change or that we stop caring about what happens in our lives. Instead, it means that we find freedom in accepting that change is natural and inevitable. It liberates us from the illusion that we can control everything, and in doing so, we open ourselves up to new possibilities, perspectives, and experiences. Impermanence becomes a tool for emotional freedom, guiding us to appreciate life's fleeting nature without being consumed by its unpredictability. Practicing non-attachment is a core principle in Buddhist philosophy, and it is one that can fundamentally change the way we experience life. Non-attachment does not mean detaching ourselves from the world or living without emotions. Instead, it is about shifting our relationship with the things, people, and outcomes we hold on to so tightly. Non-attachment is the art of engaging fully with life while releasing the need to control or possess it. It is about freeing ourselves from the suffering that arises when we cling too hard to something, believing that our happiness, identity, or self-worth depends on it. At its heart, non-attachment is about letting go of the unhealthy attachments that often drive our behavior and emotions. We live in a world where we are conditioned to believe that our value comes from external things, our possessions, relationships, achievements, or even the approval of others. We attach ourselves to these things because we believe they will give us lasting happiness or security. But in reality, this attachment often leads to anxiety, fear, and disappointment. When we tie our sense of self to things that are temporary or outside of our control, we set ourselves up for suffering. Non-attachment asks us to engage fully with the world while also recognizing that everything is transient. It doesn't mean we don't care or invest in our relationships, goals, or dreams. It means that we approach them with a sense of openness and fluidity, understanding that we can't control outcomes. We learn to hold things lightly rather than gripping them with fear. This shift allows us to enjoy and appreciate the present moment without being consumed by the need to secure it or prevent it from changing. Non-attachment fosters a deeper sense of inner peace because it helps us release the constant striving for permanence in a world that is anything but permanent. Non-attachment also teaches us to let go of the expectation that life must unfold according to our desires. So often we suffer because we believe that things should happen a certain way, or that people should behave in a specific manner. When reality doesn't align with our expectations, we become frustrated, disappointed, or even resentful. But by practicing non-attachment, we learn to accept life as it is rather than as we think it should be. This doesn't mean we passively accept injustice or give up on our goals. It simply means that we cultivate the ability to be at peace regardless of the outcome, knowing that our happiness is not dependent on everything going according to plan. In relationships, non-attachment is crucial for cultivating healthy, balanced connections. When we become too attached to a person, we may inadvertently place the burden of our happiness or security on them. This kind of attachment can lead to dependency, control, or fear of loss, which ultimately damages the relationship. Practicing non-attachment allows us to love and care deeply for others without trying to own or control them. It creates space for true connection, where we can appreciate others for who they are without placing unrealistic expectations on them. It also frees us from the fear of loss, understanding that while relationships may change, our sense of self remains intact. In our pursuit of goals and ambitions, non-attachment allows us to stay focused and motivated without becoming obsessed with a specific outcome. Often we attach ourselves so tightly to a particular vision of success that we lose sight of the bigger picture. We become consumed by the fear of failure or the need for validation, which can blind us to other opportunities or paths. Non-attachment doesn't mean we stop striving for success. It means we pursue our goals with passion and dedication, but without the anxiety that comes from trying to control every detail. By releasing our attachment to a specific result, we create space for creativity, growth, and new possibilities that we might not have seen otherwise. Non-attachment also extends to our emotions and thoughts. Many of us become attached to certain feelings or stories about ourselves. We may hold on to anger, resentment, or fear because it feels familiar, or we cling to an identity that no longer serves us. Practicing non-attachment allows us to observe our emotions and thoughts without becoming entangled in them. It's not about suppressing or denying our feelings, but rather about acknowledging them and then letting them pass. We begin to see that emotions are like waves rising and falling, temporary and impermanent. When we stop identifying so strongly with our emotions, we can experience them fully without being overwhelmed by them. Non-attachment also helps us break free from the trap of materialism. In a culture that constantly encourages us to seek happiness through consumption, it's easy to become attached to the idea that we need more money, more possessions, more status to feel complete. But the truth is, no amount of external wealth or success can bring lasting fulfillment. Non-attachment helps us shift our focus from accumulating things to cultivating a sense of contentment and gratitude for what we already have. It allows us to appreciate the present moment rather than constantly seeking happiness in the future or through material means. Ultimately, practicing non-attachment leads to a greater sense of freedom. When we stop clinging to things, people, or outcomes, we release the weight of expectation and fear. We stop being held hostage by our need for control or certainty, and we open ourselves up to life's natural flow. Non-attachment is not about detaching from life, it's about engaging with it fully, but with a sense of inner freedom that comes from knowing that our well-being is not dependent on external circumstances. It allows us to move through life with greater ease, resilience, and joy, trusting that we are enough no matter what happens. Cultivating mindfulness is one of the most transformative practices we can adopt in our daily lives. It is the art of paying full attention to the present moment without judgment or distraction. In a world that constantly pulls our focus in 1,000 different directions through technology, work, social pressures, and personal obligations, mindfulness offers a way to reclaim our attention and ultimately our sense of inner peace. By being fully present, we can begin to observe our thoughts, feelings, and actions with greater clarity, leading to more intentional and fulfilling choices. At its core, mindfulness is about being aware of what is happening right now, in the present moment, rather than being lost in thoughts about the past or the future. So often we go through life on autopilot, barely aware of what we are doing or how we are feeling. Our minds race with to-do lists, worries, and distractions, and we miss out on the richness of the present moment. When we cultivate mindfulness, we learn to slow down and engage with our surroundings in a more meaningful way. Whether it's savoring a meal, enjoying a conversation, or simply breathing, mindfulness invites us to fully experience what is happening now. Mindfulness is not just about paying attention, it's also about cultivating compassion and kindness towards ourselves and others. As we become more mindful, we begin to see our habitual patterns of thought and behavior more clearly. We might notice how often we are hard on ourselves or how frequently we react to situations out of habit, rather than from a place of choice. Mindfulness helps us soften those reactions and approach ourselves with greater gentleness. Instead of being critical or impatient with ourselves when we make mistakes, we can learn to respond with compassion and understanding. This self-compassion is a crucial element of mindfulness because it allows us to embrace our imperfections and navigate life with more grace. Mindfulness also deepens our connection with others. When we are fully present with another person, we can listen more deeply and respond more thoughtfully. In today's fast-paced world, genuine, attentive listening is a rare gift. How often are we distracted during conversations, thinking about what we will say next or checking our phones? Mindfulness teaches us to be present with others, to listen with our whole being, and to truly hear what the other person is saying. This kind of deep listening can transform relationships, fostering greater empathy, understanding, and connection. It allows us to move beyond surface-level interactions and engage with others in a more authentic and meaningful way. Another benefit of mindfulness is its ability to help us manage stress and anxiety. When we are caught up in worrying about the future or ruminating on the past, our minds can become a source of constant stress. But through mindfulness, we learn to anchor ourselves in the present moment, where much of our stress dissolves. We discover that in the here and now, we are often okay. We can breathe, observe our thoughts, and let them pass rather than getting swept away by them. Mindfulness allows us to step back from the stories our minds create and to see things with greater clarity and perspective. In moments of difficulty, mindfulness can be a powerful tool for finding calm amidst chaos. Life is unpredictable and we will all face challenges, losses, and uncertainties. But mindfulness helps us respond to these situations with greater resilience and equanimity. Instead of reacting impulsively or trying to control the uncontrollable, we can stay present with what is happening and trust that we can navigate it. By cultivating mindfulness, we develop the ability to stay grounded, even when life throws us curveballs. This groundedness doesn't mean we won't feel pain or discomfort, but it does mean that we can approach these experiences with a steadier heart and mind. Mindfulness is also a practice of gratitude. When we are fully present, we begin to notice the small, beautiful details of life that we often overlook. We become more attuned to the warmth of the sun on our skin, the taste of a fresh cup of coffee, or the sound of birds chirping outside our window. These moments of awareness can fill us with a sense of gratitude and wonder. Mindfulness invites us to appreciate the simple joys of life, to savor them, and to find contentment in the present rather than constantly seeking happiness in the future. It helps us recognize that the richness of life is available to us right now if we only take the time to notice it. Mindfulness is a practice that can be integrated into every aspect of our lives. Whether we are working, cooking, walking, or talking, we can bring mindfulness to the present moment. It's not about adding another task to our already busy lives. It's about shifting the way we engage with what we are already doing. By bringing mindful awareness to our daily activities, we can transform even the most mundane moments into opportunities for growth, connection, and peace. Over time, mindfulness becomes a way of being, a way of moving through the world with greater awareness, intention, and compassion. Finally, mindfulness is not a one-time fix or a quick solution. It is a lifelong practice that requires patience, commitment, and gentle persistence. There will be days when our minds feel scattered, when we struggle to stay present, or when we fall back into old patterns of thinking. But the beauty of mindfulness is that it teaches us to begin again over and over. Each moment offers a new opportunity to come back to the present, to refocus our attention, and to approach life with openness and curiosity. Through this ongoing practice, we cultivate a deeper sense of inner peace, resilience, and connection to ourselves and the world around us. Developing compassion is an essential part of living a life grounded in kindness, empathy, and connection. Compassion goes beyond merely feeling sympathy for someone else's struggles. It is the deep, heartfelt desire to alleviate suffering, both in ourselves and in others. It's an emotional and spiritual practice that softens our hearts and opens our eyes to the shared humanity in everyone we encounter. When we cultivate compassion, we're not only offering understanding and care to those around us, but also nurturing the seeds of inner peace within ourselves. At the core of compassion lies empathy, the ability to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, to feel their pain, joy, fear, or sorrow as if it were our own. This kind of understanding requires us to be fully present, to listen deeply, and to suspend judgment. We often think of compassion as something we extend to others, but it also requires us to extend that same gentleness and kindness to ourselves. Developing self-compassion means recognizing our own imperfections, struggles, and mistakes without harsh criticism. It's about treating ourselves with the same patience and understanding that we would offer a dear friend going through a tough time. In our fast-paced, often self-focused world, it can be easy to get caught up in our own problems and forget about the struggles of those around us. But when we take a moment to pause and consider the lives of others, we realize that every person we meet is fighting their own battles, carrying their own burdens, and longing for the same love and acceptance that we do. This realization is what fuels compassion. It reminds us that we are all connected by our shared humanity. No matter how different our experiences may be, we all have moments of vulnerability, fear, and longing. Practicing compassion also requires vulnerability. To truly be compassionate, we must be willing to let down our guard and connect with others on a deeper level. This might mean stepping outside our comfort zones and reaching out to someone who is hurting, even if we're not sure what to say or do. It might mean offering a helping hand or a listening ear, not because we have all the answers, but simply because we care. Compassion isn't about fixing someone's problems. It's about being present with them in their suffering, offering comfort, and letting them know they're not alone. One of the challenges of developing compassion is overcoming the natural instinct to protect ourselves from pain. When we see someone in distress, it can be tempting to distance ourselves, either emotionally or physically, because we don't want to be affected by their suffering. But true compassion asks us to lean in, to open our hearts, and to allow ourselves to feel the discomfort of another's pain. This can be difficult, especially when we are already dealing with our own challenges. However, when we approach suffering with compassion rather than avoidance, we create space for healing, not only for the person we are helping, but also for ourselves. Compassion is a practice that deepens over time. It starts with small acts of kindness, smiling at a stranger, offering a word of encouragement, or giving someone the benefit of the doubt. Over time, these small gestures build into a more profound way of living, where compassion becomes our default response to the world around us. We begin to see the people in our lives not as obstacles or competitors, but as fellow travelers on the same journey. We become more patient, more forgiving, and more willing to extend grace to others, even when it's not easy. Another aspect of compassion is the recognition that suffering is an inherent part of the human experience. No one is immune to pain, loss, or hardship. When we develop compassion, we acknowledge that suffering is not something to be avoided or ignored, but something to be faced with courage and tenderness. We understand that by offering compassion to others, we are also healing a part of ourselves. It reminds us that we too are deserving of love and kindness even in our darkest moments. Compassion also plays a vital role in creating meaningful relationships. When we approach others with a compassionate heart, we foster deeper connections built on trust, empathy, and mutual respect. These connections transcend superficial interactions and allow us to form bonds that are authentic and lasting. Whether in our personal relationships or our professional lives, compassion helps us navigate conflicts, misunderstandings, and differences with greater ease and understanding. It allows us to see beyond someone's words or actions to the pain or fear that might be driving them, which in turn helps us respond with more patience and grace. Moreover, compassion has a ripple effect. When we act with compassion, we inspire others to do the same. A single act of kindness can have a far-reaching impact, touching the lives of people we may never even meet. Whether it's helping a colleague, comforting a friend, or showing kindness to a stranger, these small acts of compassion can create a chain reaction of goodwill that spreads throughout our communities and beyond. In this way, compassion not only transforms individual lives, but also contributes to a more just and caring world. It's important to remember that compassion doesn't mean ignoring our own needs or allowing ourselves to be taken advantage of. Healthy compassion includes setting boundaries and knowing when to step back to take care of ourselves. In fact, self-compassion is one of the most important aspects of this practice. When we are kind to ourselves, we recharge our emotional reserves and become better equipped to offer compassion to others. This balance between caring for ourselves and caring for others is key to sustaining compassion over the long term. And in moments of frustration, anger, or hurt, compassion can feel out of reach. But it is precisely in these moments that we need it the most. When we are triggered or overwhelmed, it's easy to react with defensiveness or judgment. But compassion invites us to pause, take a breath, and respond from a place of understanding rather than reactivity. It challenges us to see the humanity in the person in front of us, to recognize that they too are navigating their own struggles. By choosing compassion in these moments, we create the opportunity for healing and reconciliation, both within ourselves and in our relationships. Finally, compassion is not a finite resource. The more we practice it, the more it grows. When we offer compassion to others, it doesn't deplete us. Instead, it nourishes our souls and reminds us of the beauty and strength of the human spirit. Compassion is a way of living that enriches our lives, deepens our relationships, and brings us closer to our truest selves. By developing compassion, we open our hearts to the world, and in doing so, we create a life filled with love, purpose, and connection. Maintaining equanimity is the practice of remaining calm, balanced, and composed regardless of the external circumstances we face. It's the ability to keep our emotional equilibrium no matter what challenges, setbacks, or successes come our way. At its core, equanimity is about cultivating a state of inner peace and stability that doesn't waver in response to external stimuli, whether they are pleasant or unpleasant. It allows us to respond to life's ups and downs with a sense of grace and poise without being swept away by emotional extremes. In today's fast-paced, often chaotic world, maintaining equanimity can seem like an impossible task. We are constantly bombarded with stressors, work pressures, personal challenges, societal demands, and the noise of the digital age. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, reactive, and emotionally off-center. But equanimity asks us to pause, breathe, and center ourselves before reacting. It teaches us that while we cannot always control what happens around us, we can control how we respond to it. One of the key components of equanimity is mindfulness, the practice of being fully present in the moment without judgment. Mindfulness helps us to stay grounded and aware, allowing us to notice when we're starting to get carried away by our emotions or reactions. By practicing mindfulness, we can catch ourselves before we become too entangled in a reactive mindset. This awareness gives us the opportunity to choose how we want to respond to any given situation, rather than simply reacting out of habit or emotional impulse. Equanimity also involves accepting that life is inherently uncertain and unpredictable. We often strive for control, believing that if we can just manage every detail of our lives, we can avoid discomfort or hardship. But the reality is that much of life is beyond our control. Equanimity teaches us to let go of the need for certainty and to embrace the ebb and flow of life's natural rhythms. When we stop resisting the inevitable changes and challenges of life, we free ourselves from a great deal of unnecessary suffering. Instead of being caught in a cycle of frustration or disappointment, we can move through life with a greater sense of ease and acceptance. This acceptance does not mean passivity or resignation. It's not about giving up or allowing life to simply happen to us. Rather, equanimity empowers us to engage with life more fully, but from a place of inner steadiness. When we are no longer tossed around by our emotions or by the events of the world, we can approach challenges with a clear mind and a strong heart. Equanimity gives us the mental and emotional space to make thoughtful, intentional choices rather than impulsive reactions. It helps us to stay focused on what really matters and to act in alignment with our values, even in the face of adversity. Another important aspect of equanimity is understanding that everything in life is temporary. Both the good times and the bad times will eventually pass. When we cling too tightly to either, we create suffering for ourselves. If we become overly attached to positive experiences, we may feel anxious when they start to fade or change. And if we resist or reject negative experiences, we may amplify our own suffering by refusing to accept what is. Equanimity allows us to appreciate life's joys without becoming overly dependent on them, and to face life's challenges without becoming overwhelmed by them. In relationships, equanimity can be especially transformative. Human interactions are often fraught with emotional ups and downs, misunderstandings, and conflict. Without equanimity, it's easy to get swept up in emotional reactions, whether it's anger, frustration, or hurt. But when we cultivate equanimity, we approach our relationships with greater calm, patience, and understanding. We are able to listen more deeply, respond more thoughtfully, and navigate conflicts with a clearer perspective. Equanimity doesn't mean being detached or uncaring. It means bringing a sense of balance and emotional steadiness to our interactions with others. Equanimity also helps us to remain grounded in our sense of self, even when others are behaving in ways that challenge or upset us. In moments of conflict or tension, it's easy to feel personally attacked or defensive. But equanimity allows us to maintain our composure and not take things too personally. It helps us to recognize that other people's behaviors are often a reflection of their own struggles, fears, and insecurities, and not a reflection of our worth. This perspective allows us to respond with compassion rather than defensiveness, and to protect our own peace of mind in the process. One of the greatest benefits of equanimity is that it fosters resilience. Life will inevitably throw us curveballs, whether it's a personal loss, a professional setback, or a health challenge. In those moments, equanimity gives us the strength to weather the storm without losing our sense of self or spiraling into despair. It helps us to stay rooted in the knowledge that we can face whatever comes our way with grace and strength. Equanimity builds emotional and mental resilience by teaching us to remain calm and centered, even in the midst of uncertainty or difficulty. Practicing equanimity also leads to greater emotional freedom. When we are no longer ruled by our emotions or by external circumstances, we experience a sense of liberation. We're no longer living in reaction to the world around us, constantly being pulled in different directions by our feelings or by the actions of others. Instead, we are able to move through life with a sense of calm confidence, knowing that we can handle whatever comes our way. This emotional freedom allows us to live more fully, more authentically, and more joyfully. It's important to note that equanimity is not something we can achieve overnight. It's a skill that requires consistent practice and self-awareness. Like any other skill, the more we practice equanimity, the stronger it becomes. We can start by bringing mindfulness to our daily lives, noticing when we begin to lose our balance and gently bringing ourselves back to a state of calm. Over time, this practice becomes more natural, and we find ourselves responding to life's challenges with greater ease and steadiness. In moments of stress or difficulty, we can remind ourselves that equanimity is always available to us. It is not something we need to find outside of ourselves. It is an inner resource that we can cultivate at any time. Even in the midst of chaos, we can take a deep breath, ground ourselves in the present moment, and return to a place of calm. By practicing equanimity, we create a foundation of inner peace that remains unshaken by the external events of life. Letting go of control is one of the most challenging yet liberating practices we can embrace. As human beings, we have a natural inclination to want to manage, direct, and influence the outcomes of our lives. We want to feel safe, secure, and in command of the situations we encounter, whether in our relationships, careers, or personal endeavors. This desire for control stems from a deep-rooted need for certainty, a belief that if we can just organize and steer the details of our lives, we can prevent discomfort, avoid mistakes, and shape the future to match our expectations. However, this drive for control often leads to frustration, anxiety, and stress. Life, in its complexity and unpredictability, rarely follows the exact blueprint we have in mind. Unexpected events, other people's actions, and unforeseen obstacles frequently arise, challenging our sense of authority over our circumstances. The harder we try to control every aspect of our lives, the more we realize how much is beyond our grasp. This creates a cycle of tension where we feel overwhelmed by the pressure to maintain control and disappointed when things don't go according to plan. Letting go of control doesn't mean abandoning responsibility or becoming passive. Instead, it's about recognizing the limits of our influence and understanding that some things are simply out of our hands. It's the practice of loosening our grip on the need to dictate every outcome, and instead learning to trust the natural unfolding of life. When we let go of control, we make room for possibilities we might not have imagined, opportunities that come from allowing space for spontaneity and flow. We open ourselves to a more expansive way of being, one where we are still actively engaged in life, but no longer constrained by rigid expectations or a fear of uncertainty. The act of releasing control invites us to cultivate a mindset of trust in ourselves, trust in others, and trust in the process of life itself. It asks us to embrace the unknown, to accept that while we may not be able to predict or manage every detail, we can still navigate through whatever life throws our way. This shift in perspective can be profoundly empowering because it relieves us of the constant pressure to make things happen in the exact way we envision. By letting go, we tap into a deeper sense of resilience and flexibility, knowing that we can adapt and thrive even in situations that don't align with our initial expectations. Letting go also encourages us to shift our focus from outcomes to process. So often we become fixated on specific goals and we measure our success or happiness by whether or not we achieve those outcomes. But when we let go of control, we begin to find value and meaning in the journey itself, not just the destination. We become more present in the moment, more attuned to the lessons, growth, and experiences that unfold along the way. This shift can be transformative because it frees us from the constant need for external validation or perfection. Instead of judging our worth by our ability to control outcomes, we start to recognize our inner strength and capacity to respond creatively to whatever arises. Letting go of control is also about releasing our attachment to certainty. As much as we might desire predictability and stability, the truth is that life is inherently uncertain. Change is inevitable, and trying to control every aspect of it can be exhausting and futile. By letting go, we learn to flow with the natural rhythms of life, adapting to changes as they come rather than resisting them. We come to accept that uncertainty is not something to fear, but rather an opportunity for growth, innovation, and new beginnings. When we stop resisting the unknown, we create space for curiosity and openness, allowing life to surprise us in beautiful and unexpected ways. In relationships, letting go of control can be especially powerful. Often we try to control how others see us, how they behave, or how they feel. We may attempt to shape their opinions, influence their decisions, or manage their emotions to align with our desires or expectations. But this form of control is often counterproductive, leading to tension, resentment, and disconnection. When we let go of the need to control others, we allow for more authentic, compassionate, and respectful interactions. We create space for the other person to show up as they truly are without the pressure to conform to our ideals or expectations. This kind of openness fosters deeper connection and mutual understanding, as it removes the barriers of manipulation and control that often undermine healthy relationships. Letting go of control in relationships also involves releasing the need to be right. So much of our desire to control others comes from the belief that our way of seeing things is the correct way. But when we let go of this need, we open ourselves to different perspectives, allowing for greater empathy and collaboration. Instead of trying to impose our will on others, we become more interested in listening, understanding, and finding common ground. This shift can bring a sense of relief and freedom, as it removes the pressure to constantly defend or assert our position. In the realm of personal growth, letting go of control is essential for true transformation. Growth and change often require us to step into the unknown, to take risks, and to surrender to a process that may feel uncomfortable or unfamiliar. When we try to control every aspect of our development, we limit ourselves to what feels safe and predictable. But real growth happens when we are willing to let go of our fears, doubts, and need for certainty, and trust the process of becoming. This might mean embracing vulnerability, facing challenges head-on, or allowing ourselves to be guided by intuition rather than rigid planning. Letting go of control also allows us to experience life more fully. When we're constantly trying to manage and manipulate situations, we miss out on the richness of the present moment. Our minds are so preoccupied with orchestrating the future that we fail to appreciate the beauty, joy, and opportunities that exist right here, right now. By releasing control, we become more attuned to the present, more open to the spontaneous joys and surprises that life offers. We begin to live with greater presence, mindfulness, and gratitude, savoring the moments that we might otherwise overlook. Letting go of control is a practice that requires patience and self-compassion. It's not about giving up or being passive. It's about recognizing where our true power lies in our ability to respond to life with openness, adaptability, and trust. By letting go of the need to control every detail, we free ourselves from unnecessary stress, anxiety, and frustration. We begin to see that life's greatest gifts often come when we stop trying to force outcomes and allow things to unfold in their own time and way. This practice also invites us to let go of perfectionism. Control and perfectionism often go hand in hand as we strive to make everything just right according to our standards. But perfectionism is a trap that keeps us stuck in a cycle of self-criticism and dissatisfaction. Letting go of control means embracing imperfection, accepting that we are human and that life is messy and unpredictable. Letting go of control is not about surrendering your power or becoming passive. It's about recognizing that true strength lies in your ability to adapt, trust, and flow with life. By releasing the need to manage every outcome, you allow yourself to be open to new possibilities, to be present in the moment, and to experience a deeper sense of peace. This shift in mindset brings freedom from fear, relieves unnecessary stress, and fosters growth in your personal relationships, inner peace, and overall well-being.